Tonight on The Wrap, the mother of a police officer who was dragged to his death tells Sky News she will lose faith in the Prime Minister if her son's killers are released early. Just days before the anniversary of PC Andrew Harper's killing, Andy Burnham says he's confident that won't happen, but the officer's mother told us she has to be careful with hope.
If Andy Burnham is watching this in Downing Street, what would your message be to him now?
You know, you've asked us to trust in you. We're trying to put our trust in you.
More than 10,000 homes without water in Essex, as the Met Office confirms this summer is likely to be the hottest on record. Secret flights and a catering truck, the elaborate ruse that helped Donald Trump avoid what's been described as an extremely serious assassination attempt by Iran. And the rush to find solar eclipse glasses as experts issue a health warning ahead of tomorrow night's event. Well, we discuss the day's biggest stories with the former Conservative Cabinet Minister, Michelle Donnellan, and the civil rights lawyer and former Labour Cabinet Minister, Lord Boateng. Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers coming up in half an hour's time. Well, hello and a very good evening to you. Michelle, Paul, welcome as well. We begin tonight with a direct message to the Prime Minister from the mother of PC Andrew Harper. Debbie Adlam's son was dragged to his death while on duty 7 years ago. Today, she warned that she would lose faith in Andy Burnham and his government if her son's killers are released early. Well, Michelle and Paul, a continuing dilemma for Downing Street, and the pressure, Paul, is most certainly on the Prime Minister.
A dilemma, yes, but we've got to protect our frontline responders, we've got to protect our police officers, our prison officers, and the Prime Minister is very clear. He will find a way, and one way or the other, we will.
Michelle?
So I think this report showing Debbie Adlam's comments is just heartbreaking. She's found this limbo period, in her words, torture, and that really shows what it's been like for the victims' families. They've had to go through this period of uncertainty, and I'm not sure it is clear, because just yesterday they were saying from Downing Street that there wasn't going to be a way of exempting them, and just the other week, Andy Burnham, the Prime Minister himself, said that he'd tried to expose every stone, that he'd done everything that he could possibly, and yet now we're back here where he's saying it is possible.
It's complicated, and it's going to require, I suspect, fresh legislation. But what is clear is that we have a Prime Minister who has listened. We have a criminal justice system that needs to be upheld and to command public confidence. And if we let people like this out, that confidence is shaken, and grieving mothers are betrayed. That can't be allowed to happen, and a way will have to be found. Difficult and complicated, and believe you me, I know it is. I'm a former prisons minister, a former police minister. I know how complicated these things are, but a way can be found.
OK, we'll talk more about that in just a moment. But certainly Andy Burnham said today that he is confident he can block the early release of the most serious offenders, as Molly Malone now reports.
PC Andrew Harper was just 28 years old and newly married when he was killed while doing his job. He'd been responding to reports of a burglary. Thieves had been stealing a quad bike. As they drove off, PC Harper's ankle became caught in the getaway car's tow rope. They then dragged him for more than a mile to his death. Two of the men convicted of his manslaughter, said to have shown no remorse, were eligible for early release from prison. But now the Prime Minister has said he'll act to prevent that from happening, bringing some relief for his family.
I have more confidence than I had earlier in the day yesterday. I have to be very careful where I'm putting my trust at the moment. But I think, the fact that Downing Street have actually been in touch, and they are saying, that they would do everything they can, that is very different to what I was hearing last week. So, I'm hopeful.
If Andy Burnham doesn't find a way to do this now, you spoke right at the beginning of this interview about trust. Would you lose faith in him and the government if it doesn't happen now?
Absolutely.
It's not yet clear exactly how it will happen. The government continue to review the policy amid wider reforms to make spaces available by looking at using the female estate to house men and speeding up the deportation of foreign prisoners. Whatever the plans look like, the Prime Minister confident he can deliver the change.
I hope we can get to a position where people who have committed the serious crimes are not in the position where they are being released early, and that would include the killers of PC Andrew Harper. That is my intention. I believe we can do it, but I now have to give time to the Justice Secretary to develop that plan, put in the detail and present it to Parliament in around 3 weeks' time.
This was Andy Burnham's first big problem when he became Prime Minister. He acted to exclude rapists, groomers and those convicted of serious child sexual offences from this early release policy. But it was almost inevitable, with huge public and political pressure, that he'd need to look at ways to exempt Andrew Harper's killers. That is now coming, but officials have been clear that it won't be easy.
And that's partly because further exemptions are not only seen as legally complicated, because it is now the law, but prisons are filling up again, with fears that going too far won't do enough to ease overcrowding.
One cannot have a situation where somebody does, think of the worst imaginable thing somebody can do or a gang of people can do, and there is absolutely nowhere to put them, so they can't be arrested and taken away. A real problem, surely, too, is if we start exempting individual people because of the emotion attached to their victim, we are sentencing on a very, very poor principle indeed.
The whole point of this policy, now law, was to stop quick fixes, reactive, emergency, early release measures. It feels instead very different, and that this whole conversation won't be stopping anytime soon. Molly Malone, Sky News.
Well, let's bring you some breaking news on that. In fact, we've just had a statement released by 50 police chiefs who have called on the Prime Minister to prevent PC Harper's killers being released. Let's just show you some of what they've had to say. It's just come in. When someone is sentenced, they say, for an exceptionally serious offence, how much confidence can victims, bereaved families and the public place in that sentence if subsequent changes to release arrangements result in an offender being released significantly earlier than originally anticipated? Families across the country are now facing the distress of learning that offenders may be released earlier than they understood when sentence was passed. We do not suggest that the grief of a police family is greater than that of any other bereaved family, nor that the life of an emergency worker has greater value. Our concern is for all victims and families affected by serious offending sentencing changes. Paul, you would agree with that, wouldn't you?
I do agree with it. It is an issue about how do you maintain confidence in the justice system. And if people are sentenced for grave offences, and there's no graver offence than taking a human life, then they have got to serve the term allocated to them as it was at the time of the allocation of the sentence. And yes, it's not about saying this particular individual's killing is more serious than that particular individual's, but it is giving the government of the day, ministers, the system, the right to say, look, we've got to protect the criminal justice system and confidence in it as a whole, and therefore this class of offender will be exempted from early release. So it can be done. It's complicated, yes, but it can be done.
Well, it's partly complicated because of Harper's Law, which is the law which Andrew Harper's wife, Lissy, campaigned for, leading Parliament to establish Harper's Law, which recognised the exceptional risks that emergency workers take while protecting others. And Debbie Adlam, PC Andrew Harper's mother, today saying that he was well over his shift time when this happened. You know, this was in overtime. And she said that you know, she keeps being told that this happened before Harper's Law was brought in. You can't retrospectively change it. And yet, because they were anticipating a certain period in jail, they're retrospectively changing the sentence that that person was given. Yeah. So what is the difference? In her mind, there is none.
Well, no, and she's also said that it feels like losing him all over again, and I can only begin to imagine how horrendous it must be for them to be going through this period now and feeling like justice isn't being done. But what this feels like is it feels quite reminiscent of the Starmer days, because Burnham is being dragged there somewhat. Because, let me finish, because it is very contradictory if we see the timeline of what has happened from the very beginning. So what happened from the very beginning is that obviously he came into office and he said, hang on a minute, let's do a review. And I applaud him for that, but for putting on the brakes and taking stock. But after that review, he announced that he would narrow it down to rapists and paedophiles, etc. But he said that he has, and he said that he had pushed it, his words, to the utter limits, and that was the extent of what he was doing.
Why is he being so responsive?
Michelle, let's not politicise this. This is an issue, overcrowding in prisons, that has arisen over many years, over successive administrations. We have fed an appetite for harsher and longer sentences while not building the prisons necessary to accommodate those prisoners.
In fact, can I just
Your government was responsible for this,
it began
our
in
government has had to clear it up. So let's not talk about Starmer or talk about political shenanigans of one sort or another. This is a national crisis of confidence. And we have got to be prepared to work together across all parties, if necessary, rushing through emergency legislation to deal with it, because it's about public confidence, it's about a public conversation about how we sentence, how we protect the public, how we rehabilitate. So don't politicise it, please.
But hang on a minute. So that's all well and good. However, we have a Prime Minister in office who has, during this period of time, altered his opinion on something extremely important and left the victims of the family in a sense of unknown of what is happening.
We have
an utter limbo to put their own words.
We have a good man who listens. We have a good man doing his best to deal with a complicated situation which he inherited. And let's give the system a chance to reform itself.
He has flip-flopped.
There's no flip-flop. There is an understanding. There is an understanding that something has to be done and a determination to do it. So let's have a national conversation about that. Let's have people coming together in Parliament with a civil service, working, listening to prison officers, listening to the police and acting accordingly. And going forward, let's not be so quick to rush through laws that put more people in prison.
But let me just come back.
Keep the right people in prison. These people must stay in prison. We must protect our prison officers. We must protect our police officers.
Yes. So I think there is a national conversation. The problem is that the Prime Minister is often following that national conversation, and certainly I think that we should have recalled Parliament over this. Instead, we've seen a long drawn-out summer and we've got more weight for those families. I don't think that this is about anything more than the poor victims' families who have been suffering and have to think day on day, what on earth is going to happen and why can't justice actually be done?
Yeah, I mean, what Michelle was saying is the accusation is, and we'll see it in the papers later, I think the Telegraph is saying that effectively Andy Burnham's thrown his Justice Secretary under a bus and that he has flip-flopped already. Just to go back to your point, which is about this was the Conservative government that first started it, the first prisoners were freed in October 2023. More than 80,000 prisoners have been released early in recent years to tackle overcrowding in jails in England and Wales. That's 80,000 since October 2023. And
because it's an appalling indictment of successive governments who haven't built prisons. And also, however, we are confronted with the fact that we need to make sure that we're sending the right people to prison. They are women in prison who are there because they are distressed, because they have been abused over years. They are people in prison serving indefinite sentences who should not be in prison. So we've got to get the right people in prison. And also, you know, we've got to pay prison officers and pay probation officers more. We've got to train them better, and we've got to give them the respect and the protection that they deserve. And I can tell you, as someone that spent a lot of time working with prison officers, working with the probation officers, when I was in government, that they do feel neglected, they feel undervalued, and we've got to change that together across the party political divide.
OK, so the Prison Officers Association, speaking to us in the last hour, said what we really need to do, I know there's a lot of suggestions about the female estate, for example, we need to triage the remand population, but also the spanner in the works now is that probation officers have voted overwhelmingly in favour of potential strike action in protest against the early release of prisoners, because it's them who will have to deal with it. So we'll keep an eye on that story. And it features, as you can see, on the front pages already. Here's the Express with the headline, Andy U-turns. I'm not going to start them off again. On early release plan, we will have a full rundown of what's in the rest of the papers at past. No doubt discuss what the papers have to say on this story as well. Now, the summer is on course to become the warmest on record in the UK, according to the Met Office, surpassing the record set only last year. It has been the driest July in almost 200 years. An amber warning for extreme heat has been issued for large parts of England. That is on Thursday. Temperatures expected to reach up to 38 degrees Celsius. Well, in East London and in parts of Essex, it's believed that dry soil has caused pipes to burst, leaving 10,000 homes without water.
I've got a 1-year-old, a 5-year-old, an 8-year-old, an elderly mother-in-law. Me, my husband, it's insane. School holidays, we're at home. It's with on top of everything else going on, this is just not needed at all.
Disgraceful, actually, but expected. Yeah, because Thames Water is disgrace, really, isn't it? I'm afraid there's always some leaks, something going on all the time.
It's absolute garbage, and, well, we've had no showers, no toilets, no nothing. No contact from Thames Water.
Yes, images of dried up waterways, you know, people picturing ducks walking on mud, effectively, dried out earth, gardens with, you know, bare patches now instead of grass, farmers, you know, pulling their hair out in despair.
Yeah, it doesn't look like the UK, does it? And this is the sign of the times. We're on track now to beat the 1976 heatwave, and more is going to come year on year, and you have to now think about, are we equipped for this kind of weather? And this summer has shown we are woefully equipped in terms of our infrastructure, our setup, our reservoir collection. We need to really treat this like a national emergency now and make sure that we are prepared for the extreme weathers that we're getting. And of course, winter, and they've now become much more wetter as well. And our poor farmers who have already been struggling are going to struggle even more now. They've had one of the earliest harvests on record. And of course, they're battling these extreme weathers now.
Yeah.
It's a climate emergency. It's a wake-up call for the global warming deniers. We clearly are in the grip of something that really does present an existential threat to our economies, to our life, to our supply chains. The price of food is going to go up. It adds to the cost of living crisis. And it's a wake-up call, but it also produces some really bizarre outcomes. I mean, we were on holiday in the Caribbean, and it was cooler in the Caribbean than it was in Kent.
Yeah.
I've got relatives in Ghana who last week had temperatures of 28 degrees centigrade, while here we had 35, 37 in Europe. I mean, it's turned the world upside down, and we're going to have to adapt, and we're going to have to change.
And we don't have the setup. We don't have the air conditioning.
Nope.
We, look at our schools, they close when it gets really hot. That then has an impact on working parents, the economy. We've got to have to alter our infrastructure. I think it's a national crime that government after government did not invest in water collection. And that we see now so many different areas in the country having to have the host pipe bans, and that we're still seeing the water companies.
And water companies paying themselves, their executives, vast sums of money, whilst telling the poor consumers that they've got to go and pick up bottles of water.
I'm not sure I've got time for the fat cat chat,
shameless,
actually.
Shameless.
Southern Water has now applied for a rare non-essential use ban drought order.
Yeah.
So that would mean businesses must stop using water for activities such as cleaning cars, filling non-domestic swimming pools. And I read that a non-essential use ban has not been imposed for 20 years, with the last one granted to Sutton and East Surrey Water in May 2006. So it's quite a rare thing. So there's an exceptional shortage of rain. It also added that people who live in the Southampton West supply area, 165,000 of them, could soon be significantly affected by a restricted water supply. This will be, you know, listing more places as we proceed. We've already seen some in, you know, in parts of Essex and North London. Keep an eye on that. Let's head to Colombia now. Emergency rescue teams there are still trying to find survivors of a powerful earthquake. More than 250 are known to have died, according to local reports, with up to 4,000 people still missing. Let's get the latest. Here's Tom Parmenter.
As the death toll rises, there are still moments of hope and survival. After 20 hours trapped under the rubble, this 35-year-old man was pulled out. He'd only suffered minor injuries. The search for other survivors means specialist teams and volunteers are picking through collapsed buildings across a vast area of Western Colombia.
I arrived from Medellin this morning at 2 a.m. to see how I can help find my brother, who we assume is back there. I'm absolutely certain he's here, absolutely certain. His horse saddle and all his belongings are here. He's not answering his phone, the doorman didn't report him leaving, and his car is parked right there. And he's not out, he's there, trapped.
Do you have faith?
Little.
This was the moment it struck on Monday morning. Some people reported it lasting for up to 4 minutes. The quake had a magnitude of 7.4, and the Colombian government has declared a national disaster. The newly elected president, Abelardo de la Espriella, is visiting some of the worst hit areas and has sent in security forces to protect communities. Even buildings that have been left standing may have to be demolished. People have been told to leave their homes if they appear unsafe. But the current mission for those digging through the aftermath is a non-stop search for life. Tom Parmenter, Sky News.
Now to an elaborate ruse by the US president after what's been described as a serious and immediate threat to his life from Iran. It's emerged that Donald Trump switched planes by hiding in a catering van as he left the NATO summit in Turkey last month. But we have been trawling through the video to build a timeline.
It's the oldest of protective methodologies. If an adversary thinks you're in one vehicle or aircraft and you're in another, you significantly reduce the threat profile for all of them. While it's not a normal occurrence for travel with the president in a war zone, it would be something that would be a smart and prudent protective measure that the public would not be aware of. This specific threat had to have been actionable and exigent for them to do this rather unorthodox move of the president of the United States to an alternate aircraft. However, That threat ended that day when he successfully returned with all of those aircraft to the United Kingdom and then back to the United States. However, whatever threat decided it was prudent to release this to the press and release this particular protective methodology may still be traveling with the president. So while this one point in time security incident is interesting, the bigger question is what insider threat thought it was prudent to share these techniques and tactics with the world?
Well, it is quite extraordinary. We are told that, left on board the plane that everyone thought Trump was on was members of his cabinet, including Marco Rubio and Scott Bessent. Well, Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth, the Minister, Secretary of State for War or Defence, depending how you want to call him, were shuttled to the smaller plane via the catering truck. I mean, it beggars belief, all of it, doesn't it? And there is said catering truck, left of screen.
It's just like a movie, isn't it? Yeah, that's the bit of the story that I found quite fascinating, that he left people on there, he left all the journalists, and then there was this elaborate story how they had to keep their windows shut so that they didn't see it. It is quite unbelievable.
But what is of real concern, however, is the extent of the threat. I mean, they wouldn't have taken this action if there wasn't a real threat. And that should give us all pause for thought, because we're going to have to up our game against the real threats in our world, which I'm afraid are from Iran, are from those who are on the wrong side of the argument globally.
Well, our colleagues at NBC News have said the Iranian threat was extremely serious and immediate, and included the possibility of the use of shoulder-to-air missiles for the journalists on board. And we are told this is the first time the president has taken an alternative mode of transport without the press pool's knowledge. They, plus Rubio and Bessent, were left on the decoy plane to effectively be a decoy for missiles, as we learn.
I mean, they were clearly regarded as entirely expendable and collateral damage. But it wouldn't have happened if there wasn't a real threat.
This is probably the most unprecedented level of alertness we've ever been at. The president and senior staff discussed the options during the final hours of the NATO summit. There was a large discussion about the ramifications. It was a snap decision. Things were changing by the hour. Our job is to keep the president safe.
And this is the world we live in. But I think the important thing to recognise for us all is that everyone has to be concerned about national security. Everyone has to take steps to protect their own equipment, their own space, and we've got to be alert to the need for stronger investment in our national defence. I'm afraid there's no substitute for that, and that does mean paying more. It means being innovative in terms of our approach to raising funds for national security, and it means getting behind, totally, our security forces.
Yeah, that sentence alone means taxes are going up on October the 28th in the budget, effectively. There we are. Lots more still to come in the next part of our programme. We'll be taking a look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Back in a minute.
jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Well, it's time now to see what is making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Let us start with the Daily Telegraph. It is leading on the joint letter by police chiefs calling on the Prime Minister to do everything possible to stop the early release of PC Andrew Harper's killers. The Times also leads on that letter describing how police chiefs have called for extra safeguards as part of the early release scheme. The Guardian speaks to union officials who are worried that Andy Burnham's desire to exclude PC Andrew Harper's killers from early release could actually lead to more serious criminals being let out of prison. The Daily Express says the PM has made a U-turn over the Harper case. According to The Eye, an upcoming 6th heatwave will mean the summer of 2026 will be the UK's hottest since records began. The Daily Mail carries comments from Andy Burnham that middle-class areas must take in more migrants. The Star leads with The Office actress Lucy Davis announcing that she has been diagnosed with terminal breast cancer. That news is also the lead for The Sun. And also the front page of the Mirror with Lucy Davis saying, "I'm not scared, I'm at peace." The Financial Times reports on the growing proportion of parts from Chinese manufacturers in the production of European cars. The Metro looks ahead to tomorrow's partial solar eclipse and the apparent boom for retailers as people rush to buy protective viewing glasses. Good luck if you can find some. So let's talk more then with Lord Wootang and Michelle Donnellan. Welcome to both of you. We're going to talk about the front page of the Daily Express to start with, whether or not what we've seen from Andy Burnham in relation to the early release of the killers of PC Andrew Harper amounts to a U-turn, Michelle.
I think it definitely does, because his own words just the other week were that he had pushed this to the utter limits. Now he has changed his opinion on that, and he is confident that he can suddenly find a solution, because he's read the room and realised that this is common sense, that this is utterly inappropriate to let these individuals out of prison and those like them that have committed such heinous crimes. And this one in particular obviously captivated the nation's attention because it was about a serving officer that was serving his country as a police officer, and the individuals in question showed no remorse throughout the entire court process. So it does stink of a U-turn, and we're only a few weeks in. That's partly why Starmer had to go. So obviously the country doesn't want a repeat performance.
I think people on, the antenna is strongly lit up for U-turns.
What the country doesn't want is party political knockabout when it comes to serious matters of public protection. And this is a matter of public protection and confidence in the criminal justice system. The Prime Minister has listened. The Prime Minister has tasked his Secretary of State for Justice to do a job of work and to come forward with a legislative solution, which I hope the Conservative Party will support in order to address this issue. We have every reason to have confidence because he's listened and he has come forward.
But he could listen about hundreds of things.
But he's listened and he's acting. Look, it's no use saying that politicians don't listen, and then when they do listen and do something, they're then accused of doing a U-turn. It's the job of an incoming Prime Minister to review the situation as he finds it and then to act. That is what he's done. So let's not play politics with this. Let's together, across parliamentary party political divides, sit down and devise a way forward to ensure that dangerous people are locked up. These men have killed. They should not be released, and Parliament will have to find a way of making sure that they are not.
So let me come back on that. Absolutely, but we can't gloss over the facts. The fact is that the Prime Minister has changed his opinion and his public stance within 1 week. He came into office, and I give him the credit. He put a stop to this, and he did a review. But at the end of that review, he did not put in place protections to prevent these individuals from coming out. He then saw the public outpour of opinion, and he, like a weather vane, changed his opinion. Surely the public want a Prime Minister that is a conviction politician that's going to stand up for his own beliefs and actually know what is right and wrong from the outset, not have to be dragged there like we saw with Starmer.
OK, let's take a look at more of the newspapers. Do you mind? We've got the for and against argument in 2 of the next newspapers. The Daily Telegraph is talking about every police chief in the UK has signed an unprecedented joint letter demanding Andy Burnham does everything possible to stop the early release of PC Andrew Harper's killers, while The Guardian says that actually the plan could backfire. It could increase the risk of some inmates being released by mistake. Did it contribute to probation officers deciding to vote overwhelmingly for strike action as well? The union saying 91% vote in favour of a strike would come as a blow to ministers. I mean, this does not come without danger.
Of course, but what we've got to do is to recognise that we've got to keep the right people in prison, but we've got to make sure that we build prisons, that we support probation officers, that we invest in public protection and in rehabilitation. And there's a national conversation around that. I hope Parliament will respond in a way that is constructive and in a way, importantly, that listens to the frontline workers. The police officers and the prison officers are telling us something that we need to learn from, namely that we have to build more prisons, we have to invest more in probation, we've got to invest more in non-custodial sentences and, face up to the fact that in the past we've got it wrong.
And governors as well. And The Guardian quotes the Prison Governors Association suggesting that the reframing of the timeline, because of the pause instigated by Andy Burnham, could lead to having to recalculate sentences, which means mistakes are more likely to happen. So, the mistakes are, they suggest, because of the delay by Andrew Burnham and the reinstigation of the policy. Should we move on? We've got a lot more to pack in. Right, let's go to migration. This is The Times, and Andy Burnham suggesting he will keep going until crossings stop. He won't be the first Prime Minister who's tried to say something like that.
Of multiple colours now, but let's hope that he could actually achieve it. But words are cheap, and we've heard these words many times. The British public's faith in this has really waned thin. And yes, the numbers have come down this summer. However, we saw the super dinghy arriving with more people in that than an average plane going on holiday. And one of the reasons that has contributed to the fact that they've come down this summer is the fact that the channel has been extremely choppy. And this just shows how the gangs get around these problems. They got around the problem by using a bigger, more robust boat to come. So we need to be outsmarting these gangs and one step ahead. And I'm worried that we're still on the back foot.
My worry is that we are paying the French very, very large sums of money. We began to pay them very large sums of money under a government of which you were a member, Michelle. We continue to pay them large sums of money, whilst they stand by and see these large boats filled up. We saw the pictures on the television of French police officers watching a baby being put into a boat before their eyes and doing nothing. So we've got to have a very, very hard conversation with the French government and tell them that if they want the money, they've got to deliver. And also, and importantly, we have to have a global conversation about changing international law so that actually we are able to defend our borders more proactively than we are currently able to do. That requires international changes in the Convention on Human Rights, on the Refugee Convention, and on the law of the sea. Because currently, the situation, whether in the Channel or in the Mediterranean, or indeed in the Pacific in the relation to Australia, it's not sustainable.
So let's take a look at how more of the papers are covering this. First of all, the Daily Mirror, speaks to the minister involved, Anna Turley, saying it's strengthening her resolve to tackle this. We cannot become used to seeing it. It cannot be the norm. We've got to end this once and for all. Similar message to Andy Burnham. And then the Daily Mail, picking up on some of the things that Andy Burnham said today, is that really middle-class areas must take their fair share of migrants. But just to pick up on what Paul suggested about, you were there in government, when this had to be discussed. When you were amongst around the cabinet table and you were talking about stop the boats and the message of that, how much frustration was being expressed that things weren't working, or was it all about Rwanda at the time and finding this deterrent?
So that was a big part of the solution of the day, to try to tackle this very complicated problem. But there was extreme frustration, of course, because this is the top issue that is always raised by the general public, that are very concerned about the fact that people are coming here unfairly, illegally, and exploiting our system, exploiting our goodwill. The British public are a very generous race, very generous set of people, but not when that's abused, and it really has been abused. And one thing that I thought was quite shocking was that the Labour response, the government response to the super dinghy, was along the lines of, well, this shows that it's all working because they're having to try and get round it. Well, no, it doesn't show it's working. It shows that they're still outsmarting us and that we still have a major challenge on our hands.
We do have a major challenge. The numbers are down, but quite clearly more has to be done. And also, and importantly, the situation is not helped by our no longer being able, as we were when we were part of the EU, to send people back to the first country they arrived in. When, and to your credit, Michelle, you warned the government of the day against the action they were taking vis-a-vis the EU. We, on leaving the EU, opened up ourselves to precisely what has now happened. The French and the other members of the European Union are not lifting a finger to assist us with our migration problem.
I think they would deny that. And that's more intelligent sharing.
I think between the UK and France. I think that oversimplifies it. This is not because we're no longer a member of the EU. Well, no, I would say it because I believe it. But I think that, well, I do. I don't think that this is because we're no longer a member of the EU. I do think that we should not have continued to give France all of that eye-watering amount of money when actually we can see for ourselves the footage of them just not enacting that.
More than 600 million, I think it is now. Yeah. Let's go to out-and-out politics, shall we? Labour overtakes Reform in a latest polling. This is a YouGov survey for The Times as wavering voters return. Certainly, I was hearing today that certain things that Andy Burnham did right at the very beginning, for example, we got it wrong on Gaza, and allowing Diane Abbott to rejoin the party, has allowed progressives on the left to think about rejoining Labour. Is that how you would characterise it, Lord Beauchamp?
What you have in Andy Burnham is someone who listens, who is a conviction politician, someone who believes that politics needs to be fixed, and it's fixed by getting out there, listening to people, and meeting the needs that they have identified on the doorstep. That's why we're now advancing in the polls, and why the Conservatives continue to flounder and be outflanked.
Well, let's go for the facts. And the article says that the Conservatives have actually gone up and are just now 1 point behind Reform, and that
is there any consolation in that? Really?
Well, that headline that you've just given of the new Prime Minister sounds fantastic, but all we've seen so far mainly is recycled announcements like we had yesterday and today that were already packaged up and ready to go from the previous Prime Minister. We've seen some dilly-dallying about on this horrendous issue that involves PC Harper and his belated and his family that's left over. So
OK, apologies. We've got so much more to come in our programme. We will reconvene this conversation, no doubt. Now, let us focus on the man who could become the country's first Muslim senator if he gets elected in the midterms, in the November midterms in America. Abdul El-Sayed is a left-wing political outsider. He wants to tackle universal healthcare, take big money out of politics, and abolish President Trump's controversial ICE program. But is he too progressive for the people of Michigan? Our US correspondent James Matthews has been finding out.
I'm proud to introduce our next U.S. Senator from Michigan, Abdul El-Sayed.
I think he means revolution.
Can he win November? I don't think so.
He's full of
Abdul. At least I don't let mine go in the middle of the Oval Office.
My name is Abdurrahman Muhammad Sayed.
Detroit, Michigan. They know their history here. This is the place that gave the world Motown music. There's been a key change here, politically.
And with a name like mine, I never thought running for office would be possible for somebody like me.
Abdul El-Sayed is the changing face of Democratic politics. The left-wing poster boy is the party's pick to run for the Senate.
And we're going to keep our tax dollars here at home instead of sending them abroad to fight wars we have no business fighting. And we're finally going to meet the unmet promise of guaranteeing every single person in this country the health care they need and deserve through Medicare for all.
His elevation reflects the Democrats' split. El-Sayed is the progressive outsider against the grain of a party establishment.
Go with the birch, that $69 mark. It's going to actually attach to the cabinet.
In Michigan, they watched the old guard try and fail to block him. Abdul El-Sayed.
Hope, you know.
Revolutionary. It's a Democratic party in civil war.
It's about the individual messages. The gentleman spoke of, primarily the health care, things of that nature. The increase in money that we're seeing in politics, dark money primarily.
Those sort of college areas, places where there are younger voters. When I say young voters, I mean in their 20s and in their 30s.
They're talking there about how El-Sayed scored with younger voters, students, wealthy white people. He ran on a progressive ticket, universal health care, taking big money out of politics, abolishing ICE immigration.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. My name is Abdul El-Sayed, running for U.S. Senate, trying to get money.
If he goes on to win a Senate seat, El-Sayed will be America's first Muslim senator. He is the candidate, social media savvy, who played it for clicks. On politics, he played on Israel, criticizing its actions in Gaza. We drove to Dearborn, Michigan, a city with a majority Arab American population. Abdul El-Sayed.
Very good.
Smart.
The shadow of Gaza divides Democrats. The fight is between a younger pro-Palestinian lobby and a party establishment that leans Israel.
So how much is this a battle then in the Democrat Party, progressives versus the centrist ideology? What does it mean come the midterms? What are your thoughts?
So I think this is really interesting. I'm not sure that this is true of the whole of the Democratic movement in terms of the US, but what they are trying to tap into more is this anti-establishment approach, but in a different way. So the same tact that obviously led to Trump being extremely successful and re-elected a second time by saying that the current system isn't working, akin to what the mantra of reform is, but they're doing it from more of a left-wing prism, which is a very interesting approach, and we will see if this gets traction across the board.
But the current system isn't working, and we've got to fess up to this on both sides of the Atlantic. People on the left and on the right feel left out of politics. They feel disregarded. They feel unlistened to. And whether you're on the left or the right, we've got to learn to recognize that we've got to do politics differently and in a way that is more inclusive, more all-embracing, more social media savvy, And what I find interesting is that this isn't just Michigan, because you had a similar situation in New York, where, again, initially everyone was saying this is a wild-eyed radical. But actually, it's working in New York. And he's brought people together across the boundaries of ordinary party politics. He's brought capital and labor together in order to build up New York. So it's about learning to do politics differently. And we shouldn't be dismissive or snooty about it. We've got to learn from it.
Yeah, I think it's about wanting a more authentic approach to politics, isn't it? They want politicians that are conviction politicians, that they believe in and do what they're going to do.
I think that's true.
I'm hurrying you because we want to talk about tomorrow, because tomorrow is Solar Eclipse Day. We've seen the cues. We've heard the health warnings about looking directly at the sun. You've heard them. Now the excitement is building ahead of tomorrow's solar eclipse. One savvy shop owner in Whitechapel, East London, has seen hundreds of customers wait around the block.
The people coming from Surrey, Southend Sea, and then they came from, yesterday night, the lady came from Southampton, and then loads of people coming from like Birmingham as well. And then we are too busy, darling, too busy on the other. So like we have not enough time to eat something.
The search for the elusive solar eclipse glasses. I'm still on the trail myself. Now, more than 90% of the sun will be blocked by the moon between the hours of 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. But the view will be even better in Spain, where there'll be a total eclipse, as our Europe correspondent Alistair Bunkle reports.
This will be one of the best places in the world to watch the solar eclipse. Palma in Mallorca, on the path of totality. Just after 8:30, the moon will pass in front of the sun, and for about 90 seconds, the island will be plunged into darkness. The eclipse will travel from the northwest tip of Spain across the center of the country to here in the Balearic Isles. The Spanish government is expecting around 500,000 extra tourists here specifically to watch the event. That's above and beyond the hundreds of thousands who are here already for their summer holidays. And so there's a big security operation in place. Roadblocks will be put up by the police and the military to make sure they control traffic. People will be heading up into the mountains to watch the eclipse. But on a beach like this, facing westward with a clear horizon, that is one of the best views you can get. And it is a special moment for these islands. The last time that there was a total eclipse in the Balearic Islands was 1905. Of course, there are a lot of warnings about the potential risks of looking directly at the sun. Normal sunglasses, like mine, will not be safe. And so you have to have a pair of proper certified eclipse glasses like this, totally black. I cannot see a thing unless I look at the sun, and I can safely now look at that orange circle in the sky.
Wow.
Well, he's all right, Jack. He's got them.
Yes, exactly. I know, I want some.
I've given up hope on actually getting...
You're going to get your colander upside down. I don't want to see it.
I've got no hope of actually getting the specs, but I have found something called a do-it-yourself pinhole camera.
Yeah.
And it's called a box projector. And apparently all you need is scissors, a box, white paper, tape, tin foil, and a pin.
That's
to
how
make
cameras start.
Sounds like Blue Peter.
You learn it at school. I want to see it for real, but I need the glasses.
I never got my Blue Peter badge.
So now is your time.
I think my time has come. You're right.
Maybe between now and 11:30 we could crack on and see if we can have lots to do with it. But anyway, you know, these don't come along very often, do they?
No, the next one's 2090, I think it is. Yeah, because I thought, oh, well, I haven't got the glasses. Next one. And then I read that and thought, oh.
I know. I'm going anywhere around the world to see a total eclipse at some point in the next 10 years, I tell you. Let's see if the weather's going to be nice for us. Let's have a look.
I hope so.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
So it's turning hotter with heatwave conditions returning, especially to England and Wales. The Met Office has an amber warning for heat covering much of central England on Thursday. That is from 9 a.m. to midnight, while Ireland has yellow warnings for most eastern parts running from tomorrow to early Friday. A generally warm and fine start tomorrow. England and Wales will see almost unbroken sunshine, cloudy elsewhere, outbreaks of rain over northern Scotland and the far west. Scotland will see outbreaks of rain becoming increasingly isolated during the morning, with more sunshine coming through, especially in the south and east. Elsewhere, expect little change, very warm generally, hot in the south, 33 degrees likely. Sea breezes will cool the coast a little. It looks clear though, doesn't it, come eclipse time?
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional. This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city, where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford, and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
Tonight on The Wrap, the mother of a police officer who was dragged to his death tells Sky News she will lose faith in the Prime Minister if her son's killers are released early. Just days before the anniversary of PC Andrew Harper's killing, Andy Burnham says he's confident that won't happen, but the officer's mother told us she has to be careful with hope.
If Andy Burnham is watching this in Downing Street, what would your message be to him now?
You know, you've asked us to trust in you. We're trying to put our trust in you.
On the programme tonight, more than 10,000 homes without water in Essex as the Met Office confirms this summer is likely to be the hottest on record. And the rush to find solar eclipse glasses as experts issue a health warning ahead of tomorrow night's event. Well, we'll be discussing the day's biggest stories with the former Conservative Cabinet Minister, Michelle Donnellan, and the civil rights lawyer and former Labour Cabinet Minister, Lord Butting. Plus a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers, that coming up in about half an hour's time. Hello, good evening to you. Michelle, Paul, welcome to both of you as well. Well, we begin tonight with a direct message to the Prime Minister from the mother of PC Andrew Harper. Debbie Adlam's son was dragged to his death while on duty 7 years ago. Today, she warned that she would lose faith in Andy Burnham and his government if her son's killers are released early. And tonight, 50 police chiefs have also called on the Prime Minister not to free the men. Michelle, Paul, the pressure on the Prime Minister continues to grow on this subject.
It certainly does. There's a public outcry of opinion on this. This case, when it happened, really captivated the public's attention because it was such an awful case back then. And now it appears that our justice system is looking like it's going to be broken and justice isn't going to be done if we're going to release these individuals back into society. Two people that, during their own court proceedings, showed no remorse whatsoever. But of course, it's not just about them, it's about the other cases like that we just don't know about. We cannot be in a position where we are letting out of prison those that have committed manslaughter of a nature of that. We've already now corrected in terms of rapists and those that are child abusers, but now we have to go one step further.
We have to listen to a grieving mother, protect our frontline first responders, our prison officers, our police officers, and also, and importantly, maintain confidence in the whole criminal justice system. And that means that we have to address this particular set of hard cases in a way that protects the public, but also, and importantly, we have to revisit our whole approach to prison building. We've got to build more, and also to sentencing. We've got to ensure that we sentence appropriately. When we do, that sentences mean what they are supposed to mean, to deter and to reform. And we've got to back our probation services so that we can protect and rehabilitate better than we've been doing.
Yeah, many issues at play, as you both suggest. Well, earlier my colleague Mark Austin spoke to PC Andrew Harper's mother and began by asking her whether the Prime Minister's intervention had made her any more hopeful that her son's killers would remain behind bars.
I wouldn't say I'm increasingly confident, but I have more confidence than I had earlier in the day yesterday. I have to be very careful where I'm putting my trust at the moment. But I think, the fact that Downing Street have actually been in touch and they are saying, that they would do everything they can, that is very different to what I was hearing last week. So, yeah, I'm hopeful, but I've got to be careful with how much hope I have, really. This weekend is his anniversary, 7 years this weekend. So we should be able to focus on that. And at the moment, I'm not able to. I don't know quite how I'm going to get through the weekend with all of this going on because, my focus has been on trying to do other things for him and trying to keep his killers in prison, which sounds like a ridiculous thing to say.
You spoke right at the beginning of this interview about trust. Would you lose faith in him and the government if it doesn't happen now?
Absolutely. I can't really. I mean, this goes back to the trust and allowing myself to believe that it might happen. I don't really know how I deal with it, to be honest. I know they are going to be out for too long. I know we're not talking an enormous amount of time, but it's a point of principle. So I'll have to deal with that if it happens. I will probably want to lock myself away for a little bit. And try and work out what the mental process is of that.
So if Andy Burnham is watching this in Downing Street, what would your message be to him now?
I suppose it's really, you know, you've asked us to trust in you. We're trying to put our trust in you, and we do really, really appreciate that. Obviously, this isn't an easy thing to do, but this is bigger than us. You know, this is for the emergency service workers, and the public have shown their support by the petition, which is obviously grown to nearly 1 million signatures. But it's bigger than us, and you know, I think our society as a whole needs to be considered in this decision. But ultimately, for me, it's about Andrew.
Debbie Adlam there. Well, certainly earlier the Prime Minister said plans were being made to reduce the number of people being freed under the early release scheme.
I've heard the depth of concern felt across the country about the potential release of the killers of PC Andrew Harper, and obviously I feel for the family and the anguish that they're going through. What I have done since I came into office is push the system every single day to go further. I've not accepted it's impossible to do more. I believe there is more that can be done. So today I have asked the Justice Secretary to present a plan in early September to Parliament to go further so that we do not have to release as many people early.
The Prime Minister there. Well, we also heard from Mark Fairhurst, the National Chair of the Prison Officers Association.
It is absolutely vital that the government change their mind over this issue and make sure there are exemptions for those who have been convicted of manslaughter. Manslaughter is a really serious offence and they should be exempt from early release. But having said that, it is right that the government need to free up capacity so we can satisfy the courts.
Well, let's bring in our political correspondent, Alex Rogers, here with the news of this call by enormous numbers of police chiefs to stop the early release of the killers of PC Andrew Harper. You know, I think it's every single police force chief constable has signed it. What have they had to say and why?
So more pressure on Andy Burnham and quite a fair amount of criticism as well. I mean, we heard from Andrew Harper's mother, you know, saying she was careful about where she was placing her trust. We've also had the Victims Commissioner accusing Andy Burnham of flip-flopping and of creating chaos and uncertainty. And now we had this big statement coordinated by the National Police Chiefs Council, which I'm going to read out some of that. It says, when someone is sentenced for an exceptionally serious offence, how much confidence can victims, bereaved families and the public place in that sentence if subsequent changes to release arrangements result in an offender being released significantly earlier than originally anticipated? Families across the country are now facing the distress of learning that offenders may be released earlier than they understood when sentence was passed. We do not suggest that the grief of a police family is greater than that of any other bereaved family, nor that the life of an emergency worker has greater value. Our concern is for all victims and families affected by serious offending sentences changes. So there's just the pressure is just piling on here. And Andy Burnham is obviously saying he's doing everything that he can. He's tasked his Justice Secretary with trying to create more prison space. But I have to say, the things that he's trying, this package of measures, you know, faster deportation of foreign criminals, looking at the indefinite sentences, none of this is an easy, quick fix. It hinges on a lot of things working, but we know there's going to be legal hurdles around the deportation of foreign offenders. None of this can be done quickly. So everything that he's saying at the moment, he's trying to please some people, but he's creating a lot of anger and upset, even among some of his backbenchers. I was speaking to one, he said this is a complete mess. And they also said, why did he raise the family's expectations like this?
OK, interesting. Two categories of prisoners have never been eligible for early release. Those serving life sentences, as you would imagine, and those serving extended determinate sentences. Following a review ordered by Andy Burnham, rapists and criminals sentenced for child sex offences and grooming are now also excluded from the expanded scheme. But one of the categories of prisoners eligible for release are those serving a sentence of manslaughter, which in itself never mind the emergency workers side of this, is mind-blowing, isn't it?
It is very hard to see how one can justify the early release of someone who has taken a life. Life ought to be sacred. We ought to be sanctifying it with the criminal justice system. And this case that we're highlighting and that's been highlighted in the press should cause us to have a national conversation about how we deal with an overcrowded prison system, how we make sure that sentences reflect the serious criminality that they are supposed to be addressing, and in that also ask ourselves, you know, how are we going to ensure going forward that we protect the public, rehabilitate offenders, and do all of that whilst giving prison officers and probation officers who feel undervalued, who feel, frankly, neglected and overlooked, how do we give them the status and the rewards that they deserve? Now, that's not going to come cheaply. So we do need to have a very serious conversation about how it's going to be paid for, because we're all going to have to pay more if we want a criminal justice system that works.
Yeah, short term though, you know, how's this fixed? First of all, it's worth pointing out that this started under the Tories. Just over 13,000 prisoners were freed from October 2023. More than 70,000 prisoners have been released under the current scheme. And we also know that Sir Keir Starmer's government passed the Sentencing Act, paving the way for criminals to be released after serving as little as a third of their custodial sentence. So practically, will they have to amend the Sentencing Act in September in order to stop the release of PC Andrew Harper's killers? Is that the only thing we're looking at now?
There is going to have to be emergency legislation so that it is done swiftly to take place in time to prevent those individuals from coming out. Absolutely.
And it will just be those who work in, like, the police or fire.
Well, that's what's being looked at the moment.
And who will it include? Everybody who's committed manslaughter?
Well, that's why we're in this, as PC Harper's mother calls it, limbo period at the moment, because we just don't know. The Prime Minister has handed it over to the MOJ to have a look at and to try and work out some kind of solutions. And in the meantime, we're left wondering, but the victim's family, you know, we only are talking this evening about one. There will be many that have had that letter notifying them. And they will be wondering now, is justice going to happen? Is it not going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hospital pass there, let's be honest, for the Justice Secretary. I think the Telegraph tonight is calling that he's been thrown under the bus by the Prime Minister.
Absolutely.
All of us have been in government, and you know this, Michelle, because you've been in Cabinet. You know that you are in government because you want to make a difference. You want to be given hard problems to tackle. This is a hard and complicated problem which government will tackle. But we will only be able to do that, in my view, with legislation, emergency legislation, that I think we'll have in the next few weeks. But beyond that, there has to be a much more difficult, serious and nuanced conversation that ought not to be dragged into party politics about how you sentence in a way that reflects public concern about crime, but also, and importantly, ensures that you don't have people in prison who ought to be, in fact, serving their sentence in the community, how you protect the community when people are released.
Every government department needs something looked at in a serious way like that, doesn't it? Let's be honest about it.
Yeah, I mean,
one sentence.
Yeah, just circling back to that point, it's remarked on by a number of the papers. It is unusual when something is gaining this much attention nationally for a Prime Minister to completely pass the buck and say, over to you, mate. That really is why a number of the papers are saying he's thrown him under the bus, because if this goes dreadfully wrong, he can pass over some of the blame.
Michelle,
it is a strategic approach.
That's not fair.
Okay.
A Prime Minister's job is to preside over a cabinet. Within that cabinet, you have specific responsibilities. This is the responsibility of the Justice Secretary, and the Prime Minister will see that that responsibility is realised and implemented in Parliament.
Okay,
I hope
let's see
with the support of the Conservative Party.
All right, then. Alex, thank you very much indeed. It is on the front pages of a number of newspapers again, as you can see, including The Guardian. Andy Burnham's plan to keep the police officers, killers in jail could backfire, according to prison governors. And we'll have a full rundown of what is in the rest of the newspapers coming up at hour. Now, this summer is on course to become the warmest on record in the UK, according to the Met Office, surpassing the record set only last year. It has been the driest July in nearly 200 years. An amber warning for extreme heat has been issued for large parts of England on Thursday, with temperatures expected to reach up to 38 degrees Celsius. Well, in East London and Essex, it's believed dry soil has caused pipes to burst, leaving 10,000 homes without water. Emma Birchley has more on that.
Now, imagine waking up on Sunday morning, you turn on the tap to fill the kettle, or you want to brush your teeth and the taps have run dry. Well, that's exactly what's happened for 10,000 homes across parts of East London, going into Essex, 14 postcodes in all. And the reason for that is major bursting of water mains, particularly at 2 locations initially. But since then, there have been other pipes that have burst. And it's a really clayey soil around here. And when it's dry, we've had this prolonged dry weather, it can shrink and crack, and then it leaves the pipes unsupported. So that's probably what we've seen happening here. And this centre and one other have been set up for people to come to. Now, they have been queuing and queuing to get up to 4 of these. Now, each one 6 bottles, so 4 packs is 48 litres in all, which may sound a lot. However, every time you flush the loo, it's 6 litres, so that's 3 of these bottles immediately. You've got to think about cooking your pasta, you've got to think about having a wash. So it quickly goes, and as we've been hearing, it causes some frustration.
I've got a 1-year-old, a 5-year-old, an 8-year-old, an elderly mother-in-law. Me, my husband, it's insane. School holidays, we're at home. It's on top of everything else going on, this is just not needed at all.
Disgraceful, actually, but expected. Yeah, because Thames Water is disgrace, really, isn't it? I'm afraid it's always some leaks, something going on all the time.
It's absolute garbage. And, well, we've had no showers, no toilets, no nothing. No contact from Thames Water.
Now, Thames Water say that they are dealing with this as fast as they can, despite what are really hot conditions. They're working around the clock. But actually making some of those repairs has been trickier than they first expected. And they say that they are making sure that vulnerable customers who are on a special priority list are being given bottles at their home, so they're being delivered. Although there have been reports that for some people, they still haven't had any water. And actually, there's been a response from the local MP, who happens to be the Defence Secretary, Wes Streeting, who said that the response simply hasn't been good enough. And there have been reports of water running out, not at this centre, but a couple of days ago. So causing enormous frustration for people. And I think part of the real issue is that they simply don't know when it's all going to be over.
I mean, we've got all sorts of crises here, right? One is water. Everybody knows what it's like not to have water or briefly electricity or whatever it might be, any utility like that. But what's your top 3 things of how we need to sort out this problem in order to adapt to these hotter summers?
We do need better messaging and better communication from government and from the water companies. And we need, and importantly, for the water companies to be regulated in a way, and indeed, where necessary, to be owned in a way, where they're putting the public and the consumer...
So the public in the future would therefore have to pay for the reservoirs and the leaks and the burst pipes, because that's what that would mean.
The public ought not to be paying for overcompensated chief executives.
But there's not that many of them.
Well,
that's not the biggest part of the bill.
They're spending millions on paying themselves
I think the bigger. I think that's the bigger problem. I think the lack of
wrong.
I think the lack of regulation, whilst obviously there's regulation, but there needs to be more stringent regulation. Whilst they're paying out the big dividends, that is the problem. Because if you did away with all the bonus
pension pots, people who've got a pension, that's the dividend.
Yeah, but the bonus thing, whilst it seems jarring and it's very unfair, wouldn't actually solve the picture when you look at the
Right, there's bigger issues than that right now. Right, give me your top 3 things then.
So I think definitely we need to fix our infrastructure. We are woefully unprepared for these extreme weathers. Our trains aren't able to run, our schools close often because they don't have air conditioning, and that has a knock-on effect on working parents who then can't work, which has a knock-on effect on the economy. And if we're just going to get hotter every year in the summer, we need to therefore be prepared and equipped for it. Our public services, look at the fires that we've already seen. If we're going to see that on multiple fronts, how are we possibly going to cope? Nobody's having that conversation and mapping it out.
So I know, Paul, you are on a joint committee, House of Lords and House of Commons. If there's a joint committee specifically on this, let's hear from them, you know, in all of these areas. Or does your committee take on some of this issue?
There's a joint committee, the Joint National Security Strategy Committee, that does look at issues around resilience. And this is a resilience issue. But they are also, and importantly, committees, select committees, government departments, HM Treasury needs to be coordinating government activity in a way that directs the investment through pooling budgets. Let me give you an example. We need to see DEFRA working with the Department of Environment, working with local government ministries in order to get a combined strategy that tackles the issue of the impact of climate change in relation to wildfires, in relation to the farms and the price that we're going to have to pay for our vegetables that will be impacted upon by climate change. You need a coordinated response across government and messaging to back that up. And I don't think we're necessarily getting that at this time.
Is it, I mean, just one
This is a wake-up
Is it a
call.
recess hole that we feel like we haven't had the messaging we need, like, you know, about how to tackle wildfires, how to ration your water, etc.? I mean, is that we just?
I think messaging,
summer void.
I think messaging is part of it, but it isn't all of it, because actually we need to massively accelerate some of the projects. It is abysmal that we haven't built a reservoir since 1992 and that the next one won't be in place for just under 10 years. I mean, that is shocking. We need to really address water storage in this country quickly.
So more money for that, more money for prisons. Let's go to a related subject next, which is, should the UK keep drilling for oil in the North Sea? We will have a special report from Ed Conway next.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist? Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
Now, should the UK keep drilling oil and gas in the North Sea? It's a big decision, one the Prime Minister will need to make soon. New YouGov polling shows that the majority of the UK public support more drilling. But will it make enough difference to our energy security, or is the North Sea just a political distraction? Our economics and data editor, Ed Conway, has been to the Britannia oil rig northeast of Aberdeen to find out.
So we've been flying for, give or take, about an hour, and now you can see we're kind of coming down in altitude. We've come below the clouds, and in a moment we will land on the rig.
Suddenly, there it is. A city of steel and aluminium out in the middle of the sea. At once alien and totally familiar. A man-made island, processing millions of barrels of oil, and in Britannia's case, mostly gas.
All of that is the Britannia rig. It goes back to, I think, 1998. It is basically one of the most important gas rigs and fields in British history. And, you know, the fascinating thing is you can literally see the wells, these pipes going down into the sea. Kind of looks, doesn't it, like they're legs, like they're structural, keeping this rig standing here. But actually, no, they are digging down deep under the ground, getting gas and transporting it up here into these wells. This is basically the beginning of the journey of that gas that will end in your home.
The conventional wisdom is that the North Sea is doomed to a pretty rapid decline. Is it that there's simply not enough oil and gas left under the ground? Or is this something else about politics, tax and regulations?
I gave Keir Starmer some pretty good advice. I said, open up the North Sea.
We're on the fossil fuel roller coaster. Everybody has been held to ransom.
Stopping all new drilling in the North Sea was a reckless promise.
Of course, the big question now is, what is the government's policy going to be towards the North Sea? Is it going to be all about allowing the North Sea to decline at the rate it is at the moment, or is there going to be a change in the emphasis? It's an ongoing and very much live question.
It really is, and there are questions coming up about licences in two very critical oil and gas fields. Where do you both stand, Michelle?
I think that we should definitely be utilising our own resources. I think it is ludicrous that we are in the middle of still an energy crisis. The cost of energy in this country is eye-watering. It's just gone up again now. And we're sitting literally practically on these resources. Of course we should be exploiting that, because otherwise what we're doing is we're importing it, which isn't good for the environment either.
But yeah, we've been talking about the drought, we've been talking about the hottest summer on record, very likely. You know, it's already predicted, driven, as we know, by climate change. We're seeing massive typhoons in China. We've seen disruption, we've seen flooding. You know, at what point do we take responsibility for that decision we're taking when all we're doing is talking about climate disruption?
Yeah, but we're not. We have to face the fact, surely, that it isn't an either-or. North Sea oil has been declining since 1990. 99. This is a mature oil field now. Our production has fallen by more than 70% since 1990. So this is not the answer to our energy security problems. The future lies with renewables. We need to invest in them, not least because all the evidence from our military people and our security people is that our medium to long-term security is best served by being world leaders in renewables. But that doesn't mean turning off all the oil taps now. You can have a mixture of both, and that's what we're going to have to do.
Yes or no to Rosebank and Jackdaw, the two decisions, the oil and gas fields, of which Andy Burnham will have to make a decision. What you say yes to?
I think yes, but that's not a reason to stop encouraging investment in non-fossil fuels, because that's our best hope for the future.
Yeah, which I don't think is what most people are saying. They're saying that this has to be done in a way that is affordable for the British public, so you can also take people with you. And it is just nonsensical to say, let's not utilise our own resources, let's import it in, because that's not good for the environment either. So it's not the case that we would be leaving those and just relying on renewable. We're continuing what we're doing now.
But we do need to have targets that reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, because you'll remember that you were part of a government that actually adopted those targets in the first place.
And we've been very...
And there was a reason why you did that and why we still need to have targets, because the direction of travel, and China is showing the way in this, they are investing in solar panels, so much so that we're having to buy them from them in order to address our own needs.
Okay,
so
but
we do need to invest in them.
I was also part of a government that then changed course on this, because we saw the repercussions and the fact that it was unaffordable for the British public. It's got to be realistic policies. But look at the cost of energy. Look at what it's doing to our businesses. Look at how many pubs are closing each week. Look at how small businesses are suffering. We've got to address this if we're ever going to have economic growth and productivity.
And the whole point
it's about a balance, getting the balance right.
The whole point about a declining oil and gas field is you need a high oil price to make it worthwhile drilling and seeking fresh oil and gas. So that's also part of the mix.
Very much part of the mix.
Yeah.
And, of course, the reality is that it's all owned privately. We didn't go down the Norwegian route of having a sovereign oil fund. And those private prices are fixed globally. So the oil companies are making an absolute fortune out of our predicament, and that needs to be addressed too.
And paying high taxes. Let's remind that. Time for the papers. Let's have a look, shall we? Let us start with the Daily Telegraph. It leads on the joint letter by police chiefs calling on the Prime Minister to do everything possible to stop the early release of PC Andrew Harper's killers. The Times also leading on that letter with police chiefs calling for extra safeguards for the early release scheme. The Guardian speaks to prison union officials who are worried, the Prison Governors Association, in fact, who are worried that Andy Burnham's desire to exclude PC Andrew Harper's killers from early release could actually lead to more serious criminals being let out of jail, the prospect for mistakes. The Express says the Prime Minister has made a U-turn over the PC Andrew Harper case. According to The Eye, an upcoming sixth heatwave will mean the summer of 2026 will be the UK's hottest since records began. The Daily Mail carries comments from Andy Burnham that middle-class areas must take in more migrants. The Star leads with The Office actress Lucy Davis announcing she has been diagnosed with terminal breast cancer. That news is also the lead story for The Sun, where she describes it as incurable. And for the Mirror too, with Lucy Davis saying, "I'm not scared, I'm at peace." The Financial Times reports on the growing proportion of parts from Chinese manufacturers in the production of European cars. The Metro looks ahead to tomorrow's partial solar eclipse and the rush to buy protective viewing glasses. So let's look in more detail with Lord Brutang and Michelle Donnellan. And Michelle, let's kick off with the Daily Telegraph and some of the details of this letter from police chiefs fighting the early release of the killers of PC Andrew Harper.
Yeah, and what I think is really interesting about this is the fact that they've all signed it. And that really does pile on the pressure now to the Prime Minister to make sure that he finds a solution. Obviously, the sentiment today was that he was strongly confident that he would find a solution. Now he absolutely has to find a solution because there is a united front, not just from the general public, but also from his frontline officers, saying that enough is enough. This cannot be acceptable. This is not what an adequate justice system looks like.
The Guardian talks about the difficulties of, first of all, changes in the time frame from Andy Burnham. He's pushed it back by a month. He had a review. Now they're having to do it quickly. Tom Wheatley, the president of the Prison Governors Association, said further changes to the scheme could lead to prisoners being wrongly released. Mistakes are more likely due to having to recalculate sentences, which is complicated in itself, trying to work out who's coming out.
The government is between a rock and a hard place. Any government would be. These are very complex issues. And at the end of the day, we have to face up to the fact that if we don't reduce the prison population somehow, then we will arrive at a situation in which the courts simply won't be able to function properly because they won't be able to sentence people who do need to be locked up to imprisonment because they won't be the places for them. So there are no easy answers. But one thing is absolutely clear, that if you have taken a life, if you've done some of the things that I'm afraid have been done and the perpetrators are released under the current scheme, it does undermine confidence in the whole criminal justice system. So people who kill need to be held in prison. People who commit serious violent offences need to be held in prison. And we've got to find a way of building sufficient numbers of prison places to do that in a way that keeps prisons safe and also places which rehabilitate and don't simply create further criminality in those who are there and in the families who inevitably pay the price of the fact that a member is in prison. So it's complicated.
Yeah. The Prime Minister very quickly learning that actually events overtake plans. So we'll move on to migration now. And Andy Burnham suggesting that middle-class areas also need to take their fair share of migrants, suggesting that all parts of the country need to play their part, that arrivals should not only be placed in the poorest communities, and they'll make sure they do. I don't think is it true they only go in the poorest areas?
No. I think this statement that he's made, which I think was part of an interview, is going to go down like a bag of sick. This is the issue that is always on the top of people's minds. They are deeply unhappy about the fact that people have taken advantage of our goodwill, come here illegally and sponged off our system when resources are short. And every part of the country has felt that and has taken people in, both with illegal housing as well as those on other schemes. So for him to say this, I think, is a bit of a kick in the teeth for many communities up and down the country who feel like, actually, their town, their city has done their bit, but they've hit their capacity now.
I mean, let's get real. This is a Daily Mail headline, and they have a particular line which they are peddling. What is true...
Which is what?
Well, their line is that whatever Andy Burnham does or says is wrong and an indication that somehow nothing has changed with Labour and that Labour's got a downer on the middle classes. What Andy Burnham...
But he's the one that brought class into it.
Let me just finish. What Andy Burnham actually said, and it's a self-evident truth, is that all too often, when the Home Office is placing people in communities, taking them out of hotels, they place them in areas where there is low-cost housing. by definition, that is the more disadvantaged and deprived of communities.
Got a minute left. I've got lots of
it's
stories.
not true to say that Andy Burnham is now suggesting that middle-class areas somehow must take more migrants. It's pointing out to the fact that there is an unfairness in the existing allocation.
Let's go on to meat, fruit and veg prices are most at risk from this extreme summer. Prices will go up, as we know, and if you think you're going to import from places like France and Spain, they've had a worse drought than we have. So
yeah, and so they're predicting within this that they're going to go up within 6 to 12 months. So the impact is going to be felt on consumers in not too long, and we already know that the cost of living and other issues mean that it is difficult for families, and this will be another burden. But my worry is about the farmers and how they make their model sustainable going forward. And we therefore need to be doing more in terms of research and development and supporting them with access to water storage within their farms, but also research and development for crops that are resistant to extreme weathers.
And we need tax incentives to enable farmers to do that, because without tax incentives, they're not going to be able to invest and they're not going to be able to have that research and development. But also, and importantly, we're going to be encouraged, I bet you this is coming up with messaging, we're going to be encouraged to look at allotments more, to grow our own vegetables, to do all those things that individuals can do in order to make the situation
There's not
better.
a bean on a bean plant, I tell you. And it takes too much water to bother. I would love to. Just want to pay tribute very quickly to an amazing actress who's on many a front page as well, which is the Office actress Lucy Davis, who's revealed that her breast cancer is now deemed to be untreatable. She's 53 years old. She said it spread to her bones, and you know, she shared her diagnosis in an emotional Instagram video that showed her ringing the cancer treatment bell. But we pay tribute to Lucy and those suffering from cancer. Plenty more still to come on the next part of our programme. We'll have more coming up next.
jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Looking through the newspapers with Paul and with Michelle. Let's go to the back pages, shall we? The latest on Infantino and the ambition to go to, we've heard it before, a 64-team World Cup.
Well, UEFA, CONCACAF and the Asian Football Confederation have all asked him to resign. And as a last desperate measure, he is now reaching out to South American football leaders, apparently, in order to expand the number of World Cup teams. I don't think it's going to work. I think he's probably dead in the water.
48
and I don't think Trump's call to arms has necessarily assisted him.
Should we go to toilets?
Yes, yes.
Not related at all. Public lavatories are set to enforce surge pricing. No way.
It's modern Britain at its maddest. So the Cotswolds District Council, which is only just very close to where I live in Wiltshire, they're consulting on this surge pricing model. And Merseyside Council there in Sefton are actually introducing a variable pricing model with tapping, contactless. So
if there's a big queue, you pay more?
Yeah, it depends on the time of the day, how much it's going to cost. Well, as we all know, the call of nature, you cannot really determine what time you need to use a public loo. So I think it'll be a bit of a false economy and the cost will surge in terms of the environmental impact, and they have to go and clean up behind buildings and behind trees.
Final picture story, shall we just show you this? It's a nature reserve manager who shares her office with a wasp's nest. Here is the picture of said wasp's nest. It is quite big, and this is Elish Rothney, who works in Norfolk. Do you fancy that yourself or not? I'm not sure.
No.
I do.
I'm a bees person.
Would you
like lots and lots of bees. I don't like wasps.
Would you live with bees like this?
No.
Outside.
But I'd appreciate the honey.
I like the honey.
Lovely to see both of you. Thank you
Good
very
to
much.
see
Paul,
you.
Michelle, brilliant. Thank you very much. We've got sport next. Another golden night for British sprinting at the European Athletics Championships.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
An enormous explosion that's just come down. I think it was a monster just landed in between us.
Hundreds and hundreds of people hoping to get north, ultimately to get to the United States.
It's a border where they're not welcome, and yet they keep coming.
We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people, taking them out and putting them into trucks and taking them away.
They make about 50 kilos of fentanyl a week. It's incredibly dangerous and toxic stuff.
There's been an upsurge in deaths. The fighting between the gangs is getting more and more vicious.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah. The battlefield is outside the barricades, which is over there. This is much more like a normal town. It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change. We're being crushed. Free from wherever you get your news. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. This is real, hardcore emergency medicine. The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world. Sky News, the full story first.
Well, hundreds of thousands of people have been using the beast for years to traverse Mexico, but it is really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on.
They've not had a good week.
I've had a good week.
There's a teaser there, a teaser.
OK, nothing to see here, drama over, full stop. Anyway, we'll get to that. She will be mortified.
So she's the first female chancellor.
I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich, but now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
Well, let us catch up with the sport now. Here's Mike.
Just one big cut. Please do it. Camera sync. Thank you.
An interesting weekend ahead for Dimitar Berbatov. Manchester United reportedly interested.
Nobody's knowing what's going to happen in the future.
Over my dead body, you won't leave Spurs.
You grow impatient. Am I going to miss my moment?
Dimitar's our next target for you, Mr. Levy.
Well, made a better one, Poyar.
Tottenham have reported them to the Premier League for tapping up Dimitar Berbatov.
I didn't feel that we'd done anything that was untoward, really.
Exhausting process. Mentally, it's not good for your mind.
The time is ticking on the final day of this transfer window. Is Dimitar Berbatov going to Manchester United?
Sir Alex is waiting for us. I'm starstruck. Then I find out that City are coming in with the offer.
The noisy neighbours would have been absolutely the noisiest ever.
And I'm like, no, just one club here. We go for United.
Daniel, I think, didn't do himself any favours.
And I took the phone and like, Daniel, please, we had a deal. I'm staying here. Bam.
A difficult move is finally only completed just 20 minutes before the deadline.
Oh my God, it's done.
Dimitar Berbatov comes with a hefty price tag, but also an excellent reputation and an impressive scoring record.
What can I say? From year to year, Tottenham got better and better, and I hope when I come here, next year we can play in Champions League.
Let's take you back to your time in Germany. How difficult was that decision to leave there?
I was so used with the city, with the fans, with the people playing good football, great football. But part of life and development of an athlete is that at one point probably he's going to be thinking, is there more? So the moment I start to think about this was the moment then for me it was clear that at one point maybe I needed to make my next step.
My family was married to German people. I played in Bayern Munich, so I followed all these clubs, and I knew that Berbatov was the most talented striker there.
It was rumors here and there. My manager was trying to tell me from time to time. So the moment when my agent came in and said, now we have a very serious interest from Spurs, then I was like, all right.
Martinho, the coach, is very good. He said, I know you, you can do well here.
When you are at Spurs and you want a player like Berbatov, is it possible for a club like Spurs to get Berbatov? And he knew that I knew him. I said, you will be a revelation here in this league.
I think over the phone it was maybe a short conversation trying to tell me that I'm his guy for the number 9. He showed the desire that he wants to have me in Spurs.
If you had a conversation with Daniel Levy 1 hour before he spoke to me, he wouldn't have promised him the world. He needed to be convinced.
Meeting Martinho for the first time, that was also a very special moment for me. As I was walking
Mike, thank you. Let's take a look at the weather.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, it's turning hotter with heatwave conditions returning, especially to England and Wales. The Met Office has an amber warning for heat covering much of central England on Thursday from 9 a.m. to midnight, while Ireland has yellow warnings for most eastern parts running from tomorrow to early Friday. So a generally warm and fine start tomorrow. England and Wales will see almost unbroken sunshine, but it'll be cloudier elsewhere with outbreaks of rain over northern Scotland and the far west. Scotland will see outbreaks of rain becoming isolated during the morning, sunshine coming through, especially in the south and the west.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, that was the wrap. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you tomorrow. The Midnight News is next.